Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's start this role play. 7 a.m. It's all yours. Who wants to jump in?
I'll do it.
All right, Max, go for it.
Expireds, does that work?
Yeah, let's pick somebody to role play with you.
Okay.
Who wants to role play with Max? Anyone? Who wants to jump in and role play with Max?
John, I'm open to being schooled by you as well.
Yeah, that's
Okay. All right, let's go.
All right, ring ring.
Hello.
Hi, I'm looking for John.
Yes, this is.
Hey, John, this is Max. I'm calling about the home on 123 Cherry Street. I'm sure you're aware by now that it recently came off the market, and I was calling to see if you had a game plan for getting it back on the market and getting it sold.
Yeah, no, we're probably gonna wait till next year now. Things are probably gonna get a lot better, and we need a break anyway. But yeah, you're welcome to call me back next year.
Oh, understandable. Absolutely. And I'll make sure that I jot that down right now. And I'm just curious, are we waiting till after the holidays? Do you mean like after the year as being like the 1st of January or more towards the spring?
Yeah, in and around that springtime. I don't know, February, March.
Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha. No, I'm looking at the property online. I'm fairly familiar with that geographic area, and I don't have to tell you this. It is a wonderful home in a very desirable area. Is there any reason you actually even put this home on the market in the first place?
Oh yeah, no, we're looking to upgrade a little bit from this house here, but it's not a must. I'm not desperate, so it's something that we want to do, but don't need to at the moment. So, I mean, it's got to be the right timing. We were on the market 6 months. We tried, so yeah. But hey, man, I gotta go. But if you want to give me a call back next year, more than welcome. Definitely open to interviewing agents then. Thanks.
Okay, definitely, definitely. I'm absolutely going to call you. And you know what? It sounds like you were on the market for 6 months. And before, obviously I'll let you go. I'm just curious if you were to get an acceptable offer in the next 30 to 40 days, have that check in hand and be able to move on to your next destination. Is that something you'd still even entertain?
Probably not, to be honest with you. I mean, we've been on the market 6 months. I mean, where were you, with this kind of request or this kind of promise when my home was on the market?
No, that's honestly a fantastic question, and I feel horrible because yes, I should have been one of the ones that was helping you sell that home. I guess right now the question really isn't kind of necessarily where was I? It was just unfortunately I was helping other people kind of exactly in your exact situation, sell their home at a desirable number. Now, I guess I'm just curious, waiting, is there something that's really important to you about waiting as opposed to selling it now?
Yeah, no, nothing really. I mean, selling it now, I just don't want to have it on the market, and we still have to find something. So there's a lot of moving parts.
So,
So
okay, still
yeah.
have to find something. Okay. And I call sellers just like yourself every single day. I am just curious if I found something off market, would that be something that interests you that I should get in front of you as quickly as possible?
I mean, not really, because we still have to sell this home in order to buy. So again, it takes a commitment, and right now we just want to break. Thanksgiving around the corner, and then Christmas. So yeah.
Obviously, yeah, and my intention is never to talk you into anything. Obviously, it's just to provide an opportunity if the numbers make sense and if you had that alternative living situation. I guess in this particular scenario, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were to sell the home in the next 30 to 45 days, even like with an incredible offer, do you guys have anywhere to go?
We don't.
Okay. All right. So it does sound like aligning you with that next property might be one of the priorities that would be helpful to focus on.
Well, I mean, yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, again, it's like a lot of moving parts. We need to sell in order to buy, and we don't have anything to buy right now. So there's no point putting it on the market.
No, that's a genuine concern because honestly, with my team, probably anywhere from 3 to 4 days after we're on market, we have an accepted offer. We're typically closing in about 30 days because of underwriting and all that fun jazz. So the moving truck is there and the check is in hand, but you have nowhere to go. I guess for you, it sounds like finding that next home might be a priority.
And I mean, 50-50. Like, we still need to sell this house.
Okay. Well, how about this? If you're open-minded to it, may I make a suggestion?
What's that?
Absolutely. You're not in a unique position. You know, honestly, there's a lot of people who have had to jump through these hurdles and do these moving parts all at once. And we've had some experience doing this and helping families reach their goals. Would it be beneficial to you for us to get together to talk about exactly how we can make that happen with a timeline that made sense for you and your family in order to make the most amount of money for your current home and obviously align you with a home that made sense for your family?
No.
Okay. That's understandable. Well, how about this? You thinking probably going back live in the spring? Why don't I stay in touch? And I know when it comes to that time, you're going to be interviewing a few agents. It sounds like a lot of my savvy sellers, when they go back on the market, very rarely do they go back with the same agent. So I guess what I'm proposing right now is how about this? Why don't I shoot you over my information, a little bit about myself? That way you can vet me, kind of see what my reviews, past track record, that sort of thing. And then we'll keep in touch. Does that sound fair?
Oh yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, send it through. I'll give you my email, and then just call me back, maybe February or March, something like that.
Okay,
Like I said,
perfect. What's the best email for you?
it's blah blah blah.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I got you down here. I'm going to shoot you over some of that information and I'll follow up at an appropriate date. And if it makes sense to align ourselves with one another, I know that there's a very, very good outcome based on our past experiences. So we'll keep in touch and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, appreciate that, Max. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye.
I think you could have pushed a little bit harder, just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some opportunity there to dig a little bit deeper on the motivation. What type of house are they looking at? If you knew a little bit more about what they want to achieve and then just kind of hone in on that, that might have been an easier close rather than just about timing and what your team can do. We usually get our homes accepted offer within the first 3 to 4 days and then close in 30 to 45 days. But I just got burned in 6 months with nothing. So, it's compelling. And yet, if you were to dig in a little bit about what I wanted to achieve on the buying end, what that looks like, maybe.
No, this could be my ignorance, but would it also be a strategy to just have a healthy follow-up game? Just send that email, shoot
up. There's nothing wrong. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that either.
But why set yourself up for another call if you don't even know if this is a valid lead because you didn't qualify them enough?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. So,
meaning for me, I would dig deeper on what they're looking for and to see if the move is realistic for them. And if it is great, I'll follow up with them. If it's not, then I'm like, because a lot of times when selling and buying, people have these imaginary scenarios that if I can sell at this price and buy at this price, then I'll do it. But if I can't, then I won't. So what will happen is if you follow up with enough of these leads, it's going to hide the good leads for you because you didn't dig deep enough on the first time.
Yeah, that makes sense. You hear that, Max is like, yeah, I hear you. I don't know if I agree, but I hear you.
No, I agree. I'm not skilled enough because I felt like I got shut down while trying to pursue
and
that
again, I want you to be clear, Max. Your voice is, I keep giving you the same positive feedback. Your voice is really good. You're improving the quality of the conversation. You're asking questions. What you're hearing from Jose and from John and from me is that you're just stopping a little prematurely. And really what we're interested in, remember, we're clearing the room by room. So he said he wanted a new home, but dig around the reasons why. How important is that to you at this stage in your life? Is that something you still want to make happen, or have things changed forever? How would your life improve in some way if you did make the move? What would be the benefit to you personally if you made the move? I've only spoken to you. I can hear you're excited about doing it. How does the other people involved in the move feel about it? Like just really digging around that. And then also to Jose's point, find out if what they're trying to accomplish is a unicorn. Like, is this actually something that's realistic? Or are their expectations not in alignment with reality? So tell me a little bit about what you were thinking, right? Because I know you're on the market at this price. I mean, did you have anybody make you any offers? That's also a good question, because sometimes they did. And then what ends up happening is that the offers were actually in alignment with what's reasonable, but it wouldn't allow them to make the move because they want to, like Jose said, buy like or sell really high and then buy like super low, which is not a realistic expectation, particularly in an environment where there's not a lot of inventory. So, and then continuing to dig around that. So if you did, let's say you got the price that you wanted, what would the next home look like? Ideally, were you trying to get new construction? Were you trying to get something bigger, something smaller? If so, what were you thinking in terms of a price that you would pay for that home? What would happen on the outside chance if, you actually had to sell your home for a little bit less than what you were thinking and then have to pay a little bit more than what you were thinking? Would you still make the move, or would you just stay put and make the best of it? So by continuing to dig and ask straightforward questions, now you can determine if it's somebody who's worth following up with or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
and those transitions are something I need to like memorize or those like qualifying questions.
Qualifying questions. And you're right. You're like right at the door of doing that. Again, the initial conversation's good. Your tonality is good. You're asking questions. It sounds conversational. You're just right at that point where it comes to like digging and stuff. I can feel you not exactly sure like where to go next. And when in doubt, just ask more questions. And again, think about it like you're in the motivation room. If I don't know clearly what the motivation is, and if it's a scale from, on a scale from 1 to 10, 8, 9, or a 10, I'm not clear on why they're trying to make the move happen. I'm not clear on how important it is to them to make the move happen. I'm not clear on all the people that are involved and how they feel about it. Me following up with you is a waste of time. Yes?
Yep. Gotcha. Yep.
Good job and way to keep stepping up, brothers. How you get better. Yeah.
So, Max, you know how Aaron says clear the room, right? Whenever you're qualifying a lead, whenever you're clearing the room, there's motivation, there's price, there's timing, there's loan balance, decision makers. There is what type of sale do they want? That's on the seller side. On the buyer side, there's a whole different set of clearing the room.
Yes.
So what he means by that is what type of property you're looking at. So I wrote down a couple of questions for that I think would have been helpful to you. One of them was it more that you weren't able to find the right property when you were listed, or were you not receiving the offers that you wanted? That'll help you identify the problem. So was it more that they weren't receiving right offers, or were they not able to find it? Like, let's say that they were able to find what they're looking for, then they weren't able to just receive the right offers. Then the problem is not finding the right property. The problem is selling the right home, selling their property, basically. During the time that you were on the market, did you see any homes that caught your attention? That'll tell you how realistic their expectations are as it relates to finding the right property. Meaning it's like, no, I didn't see any homes. That could be that unicorn situation where what they're looking for is a unicorn situation, and it may not be realistic because they have this imaginary price. If I can buy at this price and sell at this price, and that would make sense. If the right opportunity presented itself right now, meaning like if the right property presented itself, would you consider selling now versus waiting? Meaning like, hey, what if maybe the right home presented itself and you were able to get it at a good price? Would you still consider doing it now? And then just digging for what they're looking for. So I would be asking questions like, hey, Max, look, I come across a lot of off-market properties. At times, I'm able to match some of these off-market properties with potential buyers. If you tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for, I can see if any of these upcoming off-market deals would be a good match. And the reason I'm just asking is I just want to have an idea of what they're looking for. So if they're like, oh, yeah, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, in Oxnard under 600,000, or if they don't tell you the price, great. What would be the ideal budget? Oh, under 600,000. Oh, Max, you know what? My coworker Aaron actually has one coming up that's not yet listed for sale. Would you like to go take a look at it? Do you see how,
Yeah.
like, by digging a little bit deeper on what they actually want, you're able to be like, okay, is this real? Now, if they tell me, hey, dude, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath under 500,000 in Oxford, I'm like, dude, that's never going to happen. Like,
Or
and then if I ask,
6-bedroom, 5-bath for like 600,000, you're like, bro, it's never going to happen.
never going to happen. So now you're able to ask more questions around the motivation, and you're able to be like, hey, look, like, this is one of those unicorn situations. Does it make sense for me to even schedule a follow-up for this person? Like, it's not gonna, the pain's not large enough. It's one of those situations that if it happens, great. If it doesn't, then
So the key
whatever.
difference here, I want everybody to understand like what's really happening. So the key difference, I think, for most agents is they're trying to set an appointment. What me and Jose and John are looking for is, what is the problem? What is the level of motivation on a scale from like 1 to 10? And are all the decision makers on board? And do they want to do this quickly? Then and only then am I interested in setting an appointment. Do you see the difference? Most agents are just like doing everything they possibly can to try to set an appointment, where what we're doing is listening very closely, clearing the room by room to determine if we actually want to set an appointment or if it's worth following up with them.
And if you guys wanted to, I can do a quick role play on this situation, because I think that, or I know that this is where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people get stuck when people are looking to sell and buy.
I think they also get stuck, Jose, with not being able to filter for if this is a bona fide qualified lead. If it's just a suspect or a prospect. Yes? Suspects are like interested. Prospects are ready to do something. And that's actually like a very important filter. It's like critical, because otherwise, I found it very interesting. I was in a high-level mastermind at EXPCon that was invitation only, and they were giving some stats. I don't know if you guys know this, but 76% of agents in the United States up until June of 2024 hadn't sold one of their own listings. Not one. That means 24% of all the agents are listing all the properties. Only 0.014% of all agents up until June of 2024 had sold more than 30 properties. But this is part of the reason why, guys. Because once you've made the decision, like, okay, I understand I need a prospect every day. I'm not going to bellyache and moan and whine and complain about it. Like, I get it. It's what I signed up for. If I signed up to cut grass, that means I got to cut grass every day. Nobody should pat me on the back for cutting grass every day, Consuelo. Nobody. If you're looking to get strokes and somebody's saying, oh, Aisha, you did such a good job today, you prospected, that's your job. So, like, get over that. Now you're making calls. Great. You're refining your skill. Great. If you don't learn how to filter for motivation, time, and decision makers to determine if this is a suspect or a prospect, you are destined, listen to what I'm saying to you, destined to hang out at the levels of production of 10, 15, 20 deals. Because all of the people that you're speaking to, they hide the really, really good opportunities. Does that make sense? It's a super valuable skill. So listen to as Jose runs through it, because I think it would be instructive. And then we can break it down as he's doing it, like what's actually happening underneath.
Did you just never follow up with people that were like potentials, like, oh, we might sell in a year? You just never even dealt with those people. You just
again, like what I had is a filter to determine if somebody's worth following up with. Now, when I say worth, I don't mean like, everybody's has worth in the eyes of God, like that sort of thing. I'm talking about from a business perspective. And I think most agents, because they don't generate all the time, they have to tolerate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because they're not generating consistently and like constantly and perpetually, 5-6 days a week, independent of rain, sunshine, how they feel about it, their mood. What I found really interesting is, like, the other thing that's interesting is if you were to ask agents, what was a better time selling real estate, 2024 or 2008? Most agents would probably say 2024 because 2008 was a financial meltdown and recession and, kind of global recession, right? And you had large financial institutions that were just collapsing. Well, Aisha, this year, we're on track to do less transactions in 2024 than we did in 2008.
Yeah. So what I find really interesting about your methods of teaching basically is that you're really focused on finding the fish, like focusing on the good fish. You know what I mean? It's like I've read the Millionaire Real Estate book or whatever by Gary Keller, and they have that whole chapter in there. Not that this is wrong. Obviously it's not because it works, but they have like the follow-up game where it's like you follow up for a year.
Yeah, which
whatever. And eventually some of those will close. But it sounds to me like you're really focused on dialing in and finding those people that want to do business now.
Yeah, there's immense power in focus too. So like when you really consider it, like two things can be true at the same time. So in other words, if I fill like my bucket with just any fish and I'm indiscriminate as far as like which fish I put into that bucket, some of them will turn, like, will you do some deals from doing that and following up with everybody? Yeah. Will you do infinitely more deals if you focused on fish that were 8, 9s, and 10s? Yes. So to recognize how outlandish it is, how much of an outlier it is, 0.014% of all agents in the United States halfway through the year had sold more than 30 homes a year. So for me and Jose to sell 100 in a year, I sold 200 twice. Do you realize what an outlier that is? That is like so far off the pendulum of measurement. It's like 0.001% of outcomes. So here's the challenge. Is as somebody who's smart, hardworking, and ambitious, and because two things can be true at the same time, most people don't spend enough time triangulating ideas, meaning like thoughtfully disagreeing, to see what's more true. Because something's more true than something else. Yes? But most of us, what we're really interested in is just being right. And what we think we know is like it creates safety for us because it's like, oh, well, like this is what I know, right? So, but because we don't spend the time triangulating, we can't get to what's more true. So my point being is like, if you just throw everybody in a bucket and follow up with them, will you do deals? Yes. But is it more true that if you learn how to filter for motivation and only spend time with people that are motivated and only set appointments with those people and only follow up with that people, will you do disproportionately more business? My track record, Jose's track record, John's track record demonstrates that that is more true.
And I have been terrible at finding those highly motivated people. Like I haven't really known how to find them until I started doing this.
Yeah, I love that. So, and really it's just a mechanism of asking questions and knowing what questions to ask. And that's why I give you that like mental map or that filter around like clearing the room by room. So I'll give you an example. Like Heath called me yesterday. He went on a probate appointment. Everything went well. He sent them a listing agreement and then they didn't sign it. And they ghosted him for like a week. And he starts thinking something's wrong with him. So you know what I did, Jose? I started asking questions. And I said, hey, I'm curious. Are there more than one beneficiary? He said, yes. I said, who is it? He said, the brother. I said, did you talk to him at all? He said, no. Problem. Yes? Because you have multiple decision makers. So here's the analogy I gave him. I said, let me ask you a question. When you were in SWAT, did you have a protocol for containing the environment when you show up to bust the door down and get bad guys? He was like, absolutely. I said, what happens if you don't follow the protocol? He said, bad things happen. Yep. And it's usually due to what? Human error. Yes? He was like, yes. And I'm curious, afterwards, did you have a debrief to talk about what's happening? He was like, yes. I said, well, this is just like that. You see, because what's happening is you didn't contain the environment completely. You did everything right. Up until not getting all decision makers, you believed her when she said, I'm the PR and I make all the decisions. Look at Jose going, he knows better than that. I know better than that. Why? Because we had that experience. So what I told him is this is no different. When you bust down the door, you had a very specific protocol and very specific detailed procedures on how to clear the rooms room by room and look for the bad guys. And what happens when you find the bad guys? Yeah. He was like, yeah, 100%. So this is no different. And that's what me and Jose are doing and John's doing, whatever, is mentally doing that. by asking a series of detailed questions, I'm basically like controlling the environment. So that way, what only comes to the surface is 8, 9s, and 10s. And then I make a decision to focus on those and spend time with those. I can also curate the environment in terms of the presentation to ensure that there's no gaps or leaks. He left a wide open gap and now he's not getting the outcome that he wants. Yes? Yeah, but she told me. I'm like, I don't care what she told you. So in the future, you could say something like, well, Leisha, I really do appreciate that. I've had the good fortune of helping a lot of families under the same set of circumstances. And what I find is that it's actually the most helpful and efficient for families all to get the information at the same time versus playing a game of telephone, where I share it with you and then you relay it to your sibling. I can also answer any questions that they have on the spot, which I also have found can be very helpful or useful. So that way you guys can have all the information you need so you can make the decision that you feel is best in terms of how to proceed. So I'm looking here at my schedule. If we were to all connect, via telephone or Zoom, I'm imagining probably sometimes in the evenings would work better for you. Is that right? And they're like, well, yeah. And evenings for you is at like 6 or a little bit later at 7. 7. Guess what we just did? We contained the environment. Yes?
So are you saying in that situation, there was more than one person that needed to sign the agreement?
No, there's more than one beneficiary.
What does that mean exactly?
Okay, what that means is let's say somebody in your, God forbid, somebody passes away and depending on, it depends on circumstances, but let's say somebody passes away and they have heirs, they have children, let's say a brother and a sister.
Yeah, there's more than one person that money is going to. I get that part.
Yes, so as such, people will posture and say like, oh, I'm the decision maker. But you know how many times I've had where the sister says she's the decision maker, but the older brother, who's a rum-dum and the parents wanted the sister to run things, but she's not good with conflict. So she lets the brother do whatever he wants. So you have to contain that situation. But that's something that he's having to learn. And the only way you can learn that is what I told him is with reps. So he did everything right, but he just slipped up on that. So what we're talking about here through asking questions and determining who to actually follow up on is having a protocol and a procedure, which we will call clearing the room by room, around motivation, time, decision makers. And that becomes the filter with which I make decisions on who to spend time with. Because most of you are smart, hardworking, and ambitious, but you spend way too much time with unqualified, unmotivated people. You notice the head shaking, the ones that I can see? What are you looking at, Jose? You got a picture of me up in your house, bro? Is that what you're doing?
I'm working on that one. No, I was looking at the clearing the room. Let me pull up. Hold on, what I was looking at. So what Aaron was referring to was more specifically towards inherited properties, basically. But even to add on top of that, if you ever show up to a listing presentation and there is somebody there, even though it seems like that person's not really, even though, can you guys hear a duplicate or no? Yeah. Okay. So even though it seems like that person is there just for moral support, a lot of the times that person's not there for moral support. They are assisting that individual in the decision maker. So I'll give you a scenario. I show up to an appointment yesterday. I talked to the guy, I asked him because his wife passed away. I said, are you the trustee or are you the decision maker? Because he's in an assisted living facility. And he goes, or is one of your children's helping you with this decision? And he's like, no, I'm the decision maker. And then when I show up, the son is there. And the reason the son is there, he's listening to what I am saying. And the father's going to be asking him for his opinion, basically. Almost 99% of the time, that is basically true. So when I'm presenting, I'm incorporating the son in the presentation because I know that the dad is going to be like, okay, does my son approve of this? Basically.
Son's going to heavily influence the decision making. And if you find so what I would do, because again, we did so many of these, is I would ask, particularly when somebody's like up in age or older, in terms of whether they're selling that just a retail property or if there's a specific situation, like it's a probate or whatever, and they inherit it and they're the beneficiary or whatever, is I would say something like, well, Jose, I've had the good fortune of helping a lot of families at this kind of stage in life. And it's not uncommon that family members have like a son or a daughter, or perhaps a trusted friend that helps them with the process. Just so I'm clear, is there anybody that's helping you kind of with this process of getting the property on the market and getting it sold? Or are you the one that's just, leading the charge, so to speak? And then be quiet, and they'll tell you. And then what I would do, Aisha, is I would say, okay, so it sounds like your daughter, Aisha, is the one that's helping you with this process. And I find that it's really, really helpful as we're going through this process to open the lines of communication and be completely transparent, and for all of us to look at the information at the same time. So I'm wondering, does Aisha have a contact number where I can reach her at? Then I would reach out to Aisha and speak to her. Hey, I had the good fortune. I spoke to your dad, Jose, and he was kind enough to share with me that his goal and objective is to get it sold. I'm aware that you're from a distance, and I know that that can be, a little uncomfortable. I'm also imagining that you really want to make sure he gets the best person for the job. So I wanted to introduce myself and also ask you some questions with regards to this move and your dad and what's important to you. So that way I'm completely clear and I can provide you guys with the most accurate information and be the best assistance to you and your family. Would that be okay? I treat her as the seller because what's the truth? She is
the seller. Yeah.
The seller. Then when I meet with let's say she's not able to come down, what I would do, Jose, is I'd be like, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring with me a market analysis. I'm going to email it to you as well, Aisha. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you while I'm with your dad on FaceTime. So that way we can review all of the information together as a team, and you guys will have everything you need to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident that your dad's making the best choice. And that he's in good hands. How does that sound? And they're like, oh man, that's fantastic. But do you see how you would have a conversation? If you don't know this, you will have a conversation with the dad, never speak to the sister. The dad will be like, yeah, everything's great. They'll ghost you, and then they'll list with somebody else because the sister was talking to somebody else.
100%.
Yeah. Aisha's like, yep, that's happened to me. Mm-hmm. But you get mad at them, but do you see what's happening? You didn't contain it. You didn't contain the environment. Just like Heath, when he busts down the door and he's in SWAT, they have to contain that environment to prevent things from happening. Look, somebody said that literally happened to me. Yeah, I know. You know how we know our stuff so well, guys? Because Jose sold 1,000 homes and I've sold 2,000. That's why.
I mean, there is that question in the normal pre-qualification questions where you ask if there's any other decision makers.
Yeah, I know, but you have to understand, the vast majority of humans, 7 times said is once heard.
Right.
I know this. Okay. So in an organization with 350 plus people or whatever it is now, approaching 400, do you know how many times I have to tell you guys something to get you to actually hear me? Like 10. Then I have to tell you 10 more times to get you to actually believe me. Then I got to tell you 10 more times to actually try it. Then I got to tell you 10 more times to help you to believe that it's going to work. Then I have to help you. You see my point?
Mm-hmm.
So just because they're like, no, I know if they're old, that's probably not true. With a high degree of probability. Somebody's probably helping them.
Aaron, I have a question. What about, how do you deal with
I see you, Consuelo, by the way. I'll go to you next. Go ahead.
What was that?
No, Consuelo had her hand up, but I'll answer your question.
My bad. I was just gonna ask, how do you deal when the decision maker or the prospect is pretty much posturing, right? Like they're saying, no, yeah, I'm the decision maker, blah blah blah, and then
have something to say back. It's like, listen, I appreciate that, and I believe you. What I'm also aware of is that it's not uncommon when I meet with families that's, they let me know that they need to talk about it. And usually that's because the other individual that is part of the process, even though they may not be the main decision maker, wasn't present. And then we end up having to play a game of telephone where you have to relay what I shared. And I find that it's actually the most effective and efficient for your time and the other individual if we can just connect together as a team. I can review all the information at one time. It only takes 15, 20 minutes. I can answer any questions you may have. And then at least this way you'll have everything you need so you can make the decision that you feel is best in terms of how to proceed. Does that sound fair? I will also say, yeah, I appreciate that. What I'm also aware of is I make it a business practice to meet with all decision makers, because what I found with all the families that we've helped, that it's best to have everybody at the table so we can review it and answer any questions they may have on the spot versus playing a game of telephone, which I'm sure you can appreciate. So I'm looking here at my schedule. If we were all to connect under normal conditions, would you be available in the evenings or the afternoons? You just have to get better at pushing back and giving them a reason as to why you're pushing back and putting it in their best interest as to why you're pushing back.
It's almost like when it's almost like when people, like yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody and they're like I'm like, hey, I try to be very straightforward, very straight to the point. If I were to make you a cash offer, like, what price are you looking for? And then he proceeds to tell me, like, I don't know, like I don't know, I haven't looked at comps, blah 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 blah. And most people would be like, okay, generally he doesn't know. But how many times did I show up to a presentation and I basically go over the price? And like, no, I want a lot more for it. The reality is that they did know. So you have the option of pushing back in that situation or just ignoring it.
Yeah,
And that's the
and
same
something
thing that
it's the exact same thing. And something you could say there is like, listen, I just want you to be clear. My intention in asking you that question is not being nosy. It's not like I'm trying to like negotiate like like the lowest possible price sort of thing. It's more so I know your time is valuable. And I certainly wouldn't want to waste any of it. Obviously with cash offers, there's a particular margin that we're looking for because it's, purchased with the goal of, making a profit. And I want it to be equally as beneficial for you and be in alignment in terms of like, what you would feel good with. So just so I'm clear, were you thinking like 500? Were you thinking 550? So I address it. I tell them why it's in their best interest. Then I ask it in another way to flesh it out. So when I say like 550, he'll be like, oh, no, way more than that. Like, okay, now I know.
Yeah.
Or if they're like, yeah, that's about right. But now let's say my numbers was more like 480 and he's at 550. Now I know it's probably retail.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what we did, which was basically to tell him why we're asking that question. And then basically I threw out a lower number, and then what percolated to the surface was his actual number. He was like, look, I'm really looking for somewhere in this range. So this is what I was looking at when Aaron was asking me what I was looking at. Okay. So these are the different things for a seller that you want to know. You want to know the motivation. So you want to know the time frame. You want to know what price they want for the home. You want to know how much they owe on the property. You want to know if they have a realtor or if they're open in that department. You want to know what type of sale they're looking for, if they're looking for on market or off market. You want to know if they would consider any owner financing, carrying paper. You want to know the condition of the property. Everything Aaron was just sharing with you was related to the decision makers. That's what it was. When he was saying like, hey, look, like, I usually find that whenever there's other people involved, that whole thing, that's all questions around the decision maker. So what I would be doing if I was everybody, be like, okay, how do I get better at digging for the motivation? What are the motivation questions that I need to be asking? What are the time frame questions I need to be asking? And then occupancy. Hey, is this like an investment or a rental or a secondary home? What's the situation there? That's on the seller side right there, right? So this is what he's talking about, clearing the room. So basically be like, okay, do I got the motivation? Do I got the time frame? Do I got what price they have? Are they going to be relisting with the same realtor? Are they open to that? Do they already have a realtor that they've selected? Condition, blah, blah, blah. And then on the buyer side, there's buyer needs, like, hey, what type of property are you looking for, basically? So this is what Max didn't do at all. Max focused on this side, but it was a seller and a buyer. So whenever there's a buyer, you got to be able to jump to this side and be like, okay, there's some additional clearing the rooms that I have to do because they're buying as well too. The motivation, you already covered it in the seller. The time frame, you already covered it. So really it's, what are they looking for? What price are they looking for? What neighborhoods are they looking for? What bedrooms, bathrooms are they looking for? How are they going to do the sale? Meaning, are they selling and buying at the same time? Are they selling first and then buying later? Do they need the money from this property to buy the next one? This is all on the buyer side. And then, are they already qualified? Hey, look, like, I know your budget is X. I'm imagining that you've already talked to a lender, or are you going to be purchasing it in cash? So these are the different ones on the buyer side that Max could have dug a little bit deeper on, that would have given him an overall picture of what the situation. So here's the way I describe it as well. Aaron describes it as clearing the room. I describe it like a puzzle. So in order for you to determine the lead, these are all individual pieces of the puzzle. So imagine only having the motivation and no time frame, and you have no idea what the picture in the puzzle is going to be. Could you tell me the picture in the puzzle if you only have the motivation? No, right? You have no idea if it's a lead or not a lead, right? Now, if you have the motivation and the time frame, does it start to look a little bit more like a picture? It does, right? So the picture in the end is going to be a lead. Now, if you have all of them, could you tell me what the picture is? Right? So by having all of them, you're able to actually determine if this is a lead or not a lead because you've asked questions around these. You've asked like, hey, motivation questions. You've asked time frame, like what's your ideal time frame? If you don't ask the time frame, that's one of the bigger pieces in the puzzle. And then in the puzzle, there's some pieces that are bigger than other pieces as well too. So if you get the motivation and you get the time frame, dude, those are really big pieces, you know? Now, if you get the price, that's a really big piece. You get the condition, that's a really big piece. Now, the other ones are smaller pieces, like the owner financing. That's a really small piece in the puzzle. You know, what type of sale do they want? It's a smaller piece in the puzzle. It's not as important as the motivation, the timing, the pricing, and the condition. But do you see how now, if you start putting the pieces, you can see the entire picture? Now, the puzzle gets bigger when there's a buyer and a seller, or it's a separate puzzle that adds on to this puzzle. Does that make sense? And if you don't collect the pieces on the buyer side, you're not going to be able to determine if it's a lead, if there's something there,
and
or there's
with
not
that
something
analogy,
there.
what I would make a determination of very quickly based on these questions is this a puzzle that I'm even interested in solving? So the point being is like, let's say there's all of these like difficult pieces that you have to put together in order to make it happen. Well, a lot of you guys think that your like job is to be like a savior and to uplift the downtrodden. So you spend, you'll do like a handful of deals a year, but they're all these like where you have to be like Superman and jump through like 15 hoops and come up with this like super creative piece to the puzzle in order to make it happen. Where what me and Jose are doing is saying like, well, I just want this puzzle that I put together to be clear and simple to put together. The more complicated it is to put together, the less interested I am. Now, will you leave some deals on the table doing that? Yes. Will you do way more as a result? Yes.
I agree 100%. Like, yeah, I agree. But the only way you're gonna basically determine if this is a lead is by putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And what Aaron and I were saying earlier is that Max had some missing pieces of the puzzle, and his goal was to get those missing pieces on call number 2 instead of getting those missing pieces on call number 1 and determining whether or not he wants to.
That's right. And then if you play, so producing favorable outcomes is just a few disciplines practiced daily. Not producing favorable outcomes is a few errors in judgment practiced daily. So not getting the answers on that first call is an error in judgment. When you compound that out over 12 months, how many people you following up with that aren't going to do anything? Like 90% of all the people that you're calling leads. Does that make sense? Now, the reason why this is so difficult is because real puzzles with all of the pieces are actually hard to find. So as a result, what we do is we're like, oh, well, I got all these puzzles that I'm working on. I'm like, yeah, you're not making any money. Right? So it creates a false sense of security. That you were like, oh yeah, I got all these different puzzles. But it's like, nah, dude, you actually don't have any solvable puzzles. What me and Jose are interested in finding is only people where we have all of the pieces and we know what the puzzle is supposed to look like. Yes?
So even when Aaron was talking about Heath, a way, like if you're coming to me and people come to me sometimes be like, hey, look, I'm having trouble with this lead. I don't really know what direction to take them. I'm like, okay, what's their motivation? Okay, what's their time frame? Okay, what price do they want for their home? Okay, how much do they owe on the property? What type of loan do they have? Do they have a realtor? Are they open to other realtors? What type of sale? And by asking them that question, I'm able to determine whether they have a solvable puzzle or not, or if they're still missing the pieces of the puzzle. And I'm able to go back, hey, dude, to be honest, I can't give you honest guidance because you're still missing this, you're still missing this, and you're still missing this. Go back, find these things out, and that'll actually tell you that whether you have a picture or you don't have a picture, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now,
what I told Heath is like, just like in SWAT, I'm sure there are people that are very, very experienced. And usually the rest of the team goes back to them to find out, like, hey, what went wrong? What were we missing? Because they have so many reps. And because they've had so many reps, to Jose's point, I do the same thing on a regular basis, is just by asking questions like for those pieces of the puzzle, the one who's just a little bit more experienced, they can diagnose what the problem is very, very quickly.
Yeah. It's funny because I had a person that's selling and buying, and whenever they're selling and buying, I start asking them, just putting pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, why do you want to sell and buy? Oh, I want a bigger home. Okay, what do you want? What price range do you want? Well, the homes I want are in the $1 million price range. Okay, do you know what your monthly payment's going to be on that $1 million home? Or how much equity do you have in your property? Well, I have $500,000. Are you planning on putting all $500,000 down? Or are you planning on keeping some of it? No, I like to put all $500,000 down. Okay, what's your ideal payment with $500,000 down on a $1 million home? Oh, like my ideal payment's $2,000. I jump on a mortgage calculator. I'm like, look, with today's interest rates, a $500,000 loan is going to be $6,000. Are you open to that? And they're like, oh no, I'm not. Like, no way. Maybe $3,000. I'm not open to a $6,000 mortgage. That's like triple what my current mortgage is. Okay, good, great.
But I want you to recognize, look how much time he just saved.
But I'm like,
do you know how many of you would have that initial conversation, get super excited, spend all this time, show them, look at Matt's like, oh my God, that's me. Just spend all of this time, show them a bunch of properties, only to find out when it's time to write an offer that they can't afford the payment.
Yeah. And then with that person, I'm like, look, your payment, very realistic, is going to be $6,000. If you're open to that, great. I'm happy to get you over to the lender. We can start the selling and buying process. If you're not, then this is the only other option for you. You know, the only other option is taking over an assumable loan. Are you familiar with that? Boom. But that becomes a more complicated process, and some people may not want to get involved in that puzzle, you know? So, but by asking it, once again, I'll take you guys back to the chart. By asking the different questions for the different pieces of the puzzle, you're able to determine whether or not this is somebody that you want to work with, and whether it's a solvable puzzle or not. You can't tell with one or two pieces. You need more of the pieces of the puzzle, basically.
And I would also suggest that you have to seek out believable people who have made a lot of puzzles. Yes? Yeah. Because that way they can help you to construct not only understand the process of building a puzzle, but they'll help you to determine whether or not the puzzle's even worth making or not. Because there's nothing worse than somebody running, Rob, enthusiastically in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Or thinking you've got all these puzzles, like, oh my God, I've got like 10, 15, 20 different sellers that are going to be selling. And once you actually dig, you realize you only got one, which now tells you got to go out and find some more, you know? Good. Let's talk to Consuelo.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, is there like extra questions that I need to ask for the divorce lead? This is a lead that I'm going to have a Zoom meeting with today. I don't think I asked enough questions,
basically. Yeah. So what I would ask, and there's a really good video on Aaron's channel that him and I did on the divorce process. So we basically together came up with maybe like 10, 15 different questions that we would ask in that scenario. I would probably watch that video because it'll tell you exactly. But some of the questions that I would ask would be like, how far along in the divorce process are you? has the judge ordered for the property to be sold already? If the judge hasn't ordered for the property to be sold, are both you and your ex-spouse on the same page about wanting to sell the property? Will I be meeting with both you and your ex-spouse together, or will I be meeting with you guys separately? Are you guys on speaking terms? What else? What else, Novello? What else would you ask?
Is it an option for one of you, an option or a desire for one of you to buy the other out?
Yeah.
Right? Is the other individual currently residing at the property?
Who's residing at the property? Yeah.
Yes. Jose led to it because sometimes there's a divorce decree which states that the property has to be sold. Like, is it in the divorce decree that the property needs to be sold, or have you guys just come to a collective agreement that that's the case?
Who's selecting the real estate agent?
Yes. Who, like, because what I'm aware of, I've had the good fortune of helping a lot of families in these dynamics, and it's not uncommon due to it being like very emotionally charged that the selection process of an agent is kind of gets caught up in that, where, one party might feel like if the other party selects somebody that person's on their side versus the other. So just so I'm clear, are you guys in agreement on how to select an agent, or is it a situation where you might select somebody, they might select somebody, and then ultimately the attorney will decide? Is the attorney going to be involved in the selection process of an agent? Because they are sometimes.
Yeah. Who are the attorneys as well too? Because if you know who the attorneys are, how sometimes if you've been in the field long enough, how those attorneys make decisions. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, there is an attorney here in town that if she is on one side, she will take control, and she already has her 3 agents that she selects no matter what. And there's no way I can get in there, basically, So I already know that. And I'm like, all right, probably not a very high probable puzzle that I want to get involved in, because I know how she makes decisions, basically. So I think it's going down the same thing and being like, okay, like, what questions around these topics am I going to be asking? Like, so you're asking questions about the decision maker. Okay. Who's making the decision how are you guys going about making the selection of the real estate agent? Will you guys be selecting the real estate agent? Will the court be selecting the real estate agent? Will the attorneys be selecting the real estate agent? How far in the process are you guys?
Yeah. Ideally, in terms of what you want, time frame wise, how soon do you think you guys would actually like to have it on the market for sale?
Is either party wanting to keep the property?
That's right. Do you foresee that the other party will kind of be very cooperative, or do you see them, there being friction or resistance?
So this is a expire lead. The house was already on the market since March. But when I asked her if the spouse could be on the Zoom meeting, she's like, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be possible. She's in Virginia.
Who lives at the property?
The husband.
The husband.
I think the husband is the one who had the property listed with the agent.
Why do you think that is? He controls the territory.
That's right.
Meaning, like, I've got a castle and I'm sitting in the castle, so I have the access. So who has more leverage in the selection process of an agent? The husband,
does, for sure,
because he's the one that's actually going to be inconvenienced through the showings. So your puzzle just became a lot less attractive.
Yeah, your puzzle became now immediately, as soon as I found that out, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is a more complicated puzzle. You know what I'm saying? And then what I would do, I would make a split decision in that moment, and more likely than not, I may ask a few more questions.
Yeah,
but
I would.
To Jose's point, you see, because he's like emotionally intelligent, he understands, like, oh, why do you think that is? It's because he's the king of the castle, bro, and he's controlling the dynamic. So he's actually the decision maker.
So what I should have done is
be the decision maker.
Right.
There's a very high chance that he's the decision.
Well,
maker.
he has more influence over that decision.
More influence.
Yeah. So, like, what I would actually want to do is to speak to him, because he selected the last agent, and with a high degree of probability, because he's currently living in the property, he's probably going to select the other one. Now, what's also true, if you understand, like, emotionally intelligence, is that if he's still living in the property and he's just so when people internally haven't made a clear decision, they have a duality inside of them where part of them wants to sell and the other part doesn't. Do you know what they'll do, Consuelo?
Sabotage.
What they will do is they will, in the external world, do something that satisfies both sides of them. So in the external world, what they'll do is put it on the market, but they'll put it on the market at a price that'll cause it not to sell, which is what's happening. Do you understand? He doesn't want to leave. Because if he did, guess what? He'd lower the price and sell it.
So here's another question. Who's making the mortgage payment as well, too?
Yeah.
Because that'll tell you about the situation. Like I asked that question to a divorce, like who's making the mortgage payment? Oh, I'm making the mortgage payment and I'm the spouse. If I'm the one in Virginia making the mortgage payment, is the husband really motivated to leave?
No.
No, he's got nothing. He's living in a house for free, basically, but the spouse is making the mortgage payment because she doesn't want her credit to go to shit. So she's making the mortgage payment. So I would just ask more questions. Okay, who selected the last real estate agent? Oh, my husband did. Okay, being that your husband selected the last real estate agent, who's going to be selecting the next real estate agent? Oh, well, it's going to be a combination of both people selecting the real estate agent. Okay,
yeah,
great.
And then what
Are
I
you
would
open
say
to me having a conversation with him, you know?
Yeah, and what I would say there, when she said that, I wouldn't take her word for it. She's like, yeah, we'll both be selecting. Okay, and just so I'm clear, have you both agreed to that? Like, did you go to the attorneys and agree to that in writing?
Even I had I received cash offer requests from people all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I want a cash offer, and I'm like, it's a divorce. And as soon as I hear I'm like it's a divorce, and they want me to go out and give them a cash offer, but a lot of times what they want to do is they want to use that cash offer to go back to the ex-spouse and be like, see, the home's only worth 500,000. Let me buy it for 500,000 instead of basically this investor buying it for 500. So they're using my offer as a negotiating tool with the other person. So I'm going to ask more questions. I'll be like, okay, is your ex-spouse, are they aware that you requested a cash offer? No, they're not. Okay, are they aware that you want me to come over on Thursday? No, they're not. I wanted to keep that private. I'm like, mm-mm. In order for me to go out there, I need them to be aware that we're working on this cash offer. Is it okay if I reach out to them? No, it's not okay. Okay. That puzzle just basically half of it just went missing, basically, you know? Because the odds of me getting the listing just decreased tremendously because the other person has no idea that I'm even involved. And it's very likely that, okay, is the other person wanting to sell the property? No, the other person's not wanting to sell the property. Okay, this is a puzzle I have or if I do, I'm like, hey, look, just to be honest, my offer would come in the $500,000 range. If that helps you at all, just so you know, yeah, that helps me. Great. If you
could just come out and just say it, like, hey, what I'm aware of, because I have the good fortune of helping a lot of families in these dynamics. And oftentimes when a cash offer is requested and it's a divorce situation, I'm not suggesting this is true for you, but just in general, what happens is that people are looking for information. So that way they can go back to the other party and say like, hey, this is what it's worth. Like, sell it to me for this. So just so I'm clear, I'm not suggesting that's what you're doing, but just so I'm clear, are you genuinely interested in a cash offer? Like, if it makes sense that you would proceed, or is it more like you just gathering information? And then be quiet, and they'll tell you, bro. When you show up like that, like I remember I went to a for sale by owners thing, and I was sensing that he was going to do the same thing, just kind of get information, because for sale by owners do the same thing, right? They get information and they use your information to list the property. So I was like, hey, I'm not suggesting that you're doing this. I'm just aware that it's not uncommon that for sale by owners, they're interested in getting information from a professional agent like myself who sells a lot of properties in the area. And then they use that information in an attempt to try to sell it on their own. So just so I'm clear, are you genuinely interested in connecting? And if it all made sense, you'd actually be open to hiring me? Or is this just like a fact-finding mission? And I was quiet, and he was like, no, if it makes sense, I'm going to list the property with you. I said, great. And then I went over there and listed the property.
Yeah. So same thing happened to me yesterday.
Yeah.
With a guy.
So, but like most of you are just afraid to actually say that. Because if you don't generate, you have to tolerate. You see what I'm saying?
So I would watch that divorce video. I think all of the questions that we asked are on there with maybe a couple of additional ones on Aaron's channel. And then I would basically write those out and be like, okay, which ones are applicable to this situation and which ones have I not asked up to this point?
The main
basically.
takeaway, because I'm noticing our time, this has been fire. It's been a master class in selling. What selling really is, guys, is asking questions. And the hallmark of a great sales presentation is a flurry of questions to determine the motivation, to determine time frame, to determine decision makers, and constantly and perpetually like setting the stage, creating the environment that makes people conducive for, like, makes them receptive to a request before you make it. I am going to make a request when I see you, which is to hire me. And I'm also like determining, again, if people's level of motivation is high enough that it dictates, getting a follow-up. And I'm also plugging all the leaks, which increases the probability that we'll get a contract signed. So I hope this has been helpful or useful to you in some way. Information by itself is no good. You have to apply it. Doing is better than watching. Go forth and do. Also, me and Jose are putting on a ridiculous live event in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We will have Pace Morby in the building teaching you creative finance. Jose is going to do a presentation. I'm going to do a presentation. A bunch of other rock stars are going to be doing presentations. Make sure you get your tickets. There's only 300 of them. They're already selling out. Get them quick. If you're interested in that, DM me or Jose. Let's go. Let's grow.